Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining on today, everyone. While everyone clicks on, if you'd like to just put in the chat box where you're joining on from today, that would be wonderful. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things. You will be muted today, and any questions that you have throughout the webinar, feel free to put in the question box or the chat box, and we'll answer all questions at the end unless it's anything that I can help with. So I will, I'll chat with you back and forth if it's anything I can do. All right, so today's Subjects That Matter Most webinar is a global rural collaboration, student nurses engaging with community health assessment sustainable education, or the CHASE model, to reduce health disparities. Today we have two sessions. Keith Whitten presented session 1 earlier, and Ms. Jean Ross will be presenting session 2 right now. They would have loved to present together, but with time zone differences, we'll be doing things a little bit differently. Keith and Jean have presented this presentation many times, so although Keith will not be here, he has recorded a piece in the presentation. So Jean is an associate professor in nursing at Otago Polytechnic in New Zealand. She has more than 25 years of experience working with rural nursing workforce, including the areas of research and education. Jean's work with rural nurses began in 1994 with the establishment of the National Centre for Rural Health in New Zealand, of which she was co-director. Jean has published 2 books and numerous journal publications, and she is also on GRNEN's leadership team. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Jean.
Sorry, I just pressed the wrong button. You wanted that, as you've said that information, haven't you, Chrissy? So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for attending. As Chrissy's just said, we have got one presentation that Keith from the UK has presented in New Zealand time, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm presenting now for generally anybody that can attend from this side of the world because of time zones. I'm not going to be showing my face. And the reason is because I had an accident on Sunday. My dog pulled me and I went into a table. And so I have 6 stitches and a big black eye. So hence not showing my face, but there is a picture of me as we move along. So thank you very much. Rural Sustainable Futures, engaging with the CHASE model, which I will explain, to enhance community well-being. Generally, I want to recognize that the rural population status, health status, is significantly of iniquity if you look at urban populations. I want to just recognize that as something that I'm very passionate about to improve, to do something about, both from a research perspective and from an education perspective, by working alongside and with student nurse learners to improve health disparities. There are many health disparities that are specific to the rural populations, mainly because of access, affordability, and appropriate healthcare. And so I want to acknowledge that worldwide. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide a solution-focused initiative that I've been working on for a number of years that actually will and does improve sustainable rural futures. I'm going to introduce the CHASE model to you, which I and two other colleagues developed in 2016, and we've been using this and adapting it for a number of years to support student learning and to improve health in rural communities. I'm going to introduce a case study, and the case study is where Keith Whiddon is from, which is in Bishop's Castle in Shropshire in the UK, in a rural medieval village where myself and the students have worked with for the last 2 years, and will continue to do that for the next year. And I'm going to close with implications for the future, how the CHASE model can be utilized by anybody, either in education or community development, and how we can build a network to move us all forward. So, as I've indicated, that there is a rural-urban inequity that is exacerbated by deprivation and ethnicity. Specifically in New Zealand, there is a limited rural definition that supports the practice of clinicians, the payment of fees for service and for research. This has been noted worldwide that because there are so many rural definitions in different countries, it's very difficult to do some comparison about health and defining rural. This is an area that is being worked on in New Zealand at this present minute by a health geographer and a rural hospital doctor. It looks like that it will be published in the next few weeks. And they've done a significant piece of work on this, which hopefully will help us. I want to acknowledge that there is a well-known notion of a shorter life expectancy for Indigenous populations, and specifically in New Zealand, Indigenous populations live in rural areas. There's a higher percentage. We note that mental health, youth health, maternity services, farmers and their families have inadequate health care, as does older people and isolation of older people in rural areas. And as I mentioned before, there is reduced accessibility and availability of health services. So how do nurses fit into this massive, complex area of rural issues? Well, nurses' contribution in relation to social justice. So population health is where I'm coming from a community perspective and a rural perspective. So it's population health is defined as an approach that focuses on interrelated conditions and factors that influence the health of populations, and of course ours is specifically rural, over the life course, identifies systematic variations in their patterns of occurrence, and applies the resulting knowledge, evidence-based, particularly to develop and implement policies and actions to improve the health and well-being of those rural populations. So I'm linking this as our work in community in relation to population health and its social justice in action, where nurses make a difference. And so therefore, as my position as an associate professor in the education of nurse learners, it is about preparing them for practice and the notion of social justice. So what I just would like to offer here is that I've been working alongside with communities for the last 25 more years. And in particular, the CHASE model, or the community development research projects that we now call them, occurred very early on in this century, and we used to call them health promotion projects, in which there was only about 2 or 3 students in a group, and that would only happen twice a year. So it was very small, 6 students, and we called them health promotion projects. And we worked on that for a number of years until around about 2015. I felt that there was more substance required, and the students or the nurse learners could provide a much deeper contribution to rural communities rather than working in small organizations. And so we developed in 2015, 2017, I think, as we updated our curriculum to call these now community projects or community development research projects. And as we did that, we realized that the number of students that could accommodate a project really required more students to be working per project. So instead of 2 or 3 students working, as we called, on a health promotion project, we were seeing 3 to 5 students working together on these projects, which again was a significant amount of work in what was expected of them through the whole cycle of the community project, from developing a partnership with the community stakeholders, to undertaking community profile, to identifying health needs, and then to deliver a significant report in relation to that health need and the health promotion message and resource. And so in around 2017, as we developed the CHASE model and that was working, we realized that it was very important that we started to accommodate these projects with more students. And as you'll see in this slide, we then realized that to get significant contribution from the learners that was meaningful for communities, that it would be best to have between 9 and 12 students working per project. Now, these projects were geographically related in a rural area. And as we moved forward in 2020, we started to work outside of New Zealand and worked with in Vanuatu, and we worked with Keith Whidden in Bishop's Castle as well. And we did that virtually. So one was done pre-COVID and one was done during COVID. So we started to engage in a virtual platform as well. Rather than students visiting rural areas face to face, we were now working in a virtual platform. So to do this and to gather significant data, we realized that we really did need ethical approval for students to do this. And so we went for ethical B, which is that students are able to collect data, but only from significant people like stakeholders in the community rather than the general public. That would be category A. So we've generally worked with category B, ethical application, and also from our Indigenous population in New Zealand, who have oversight of the work and the cultural application of what we're doing. And so I'm just indicating here, I've mentioned about working alongside and with in New Zealand, and I've also mentioned about the UK and Vanuatu. And so this is just to position our global collaboration that we are working now with Australia. We're going to be working with the USA, with the UK, Iceland, and in Wales in the UK, where I'm originally from. So my intention is in the next 12 months is to undertake a community development research project in the small rural town of where I'm from. And so that's our connection at the moment, that we're working in New Zealand, England, and Wales. And the case study is going to be in England. And you can just see that on the globe there of where we're working. Sorry. I'll just move straight on to the CHASE model. I'm sure you're interested to know what it's all about. So it stands for Community Health Assessment Sustainable Education Model. And I do believe it is the jigsaw to enhance nurse learners' ability to work alongside with community. It enables nurse learners, and particularly nurses, to, in the long run, influence policy and have some legal application at a local, national, and eventually global level. So the community development aims to address the nurse's role in advocacy that requires them to act on behalf of communities. And I've reflected back and indicate that this is like Florence Nightingale to remove health disparities for all. So this is the Chase model. This is the one that we're working with now. We do have the original one, and I'll just bring that up in a minute, but that just had 6 phases. We now have 9 phases, and we have a pre-engagement phase, which is we understand by one of the nurse facilitators, such as ourselves, building a relationship with the community prior to the students working with that community has significant improvement in long-term engagement over 2, 3, 4 years. And we can keep going back to the community. The community stakeholders are actually asking us to keep going back. They can see the value of what the nurse learners are achieving. They can see the improvement of any resource that they do develop through impact evaluation, which I will talk a little bit more about in a minute. But they're actually saying we can build on this. We can build on this, and I'll explain that in the case study in Bishop's Castle during this presentation. So as you will see from this Chase model, we have the on the lower surface we have the pre-orientation, pre-engagement, pre-orientation, orientation, and then the 9 phases. And up above we have the responsibility, which is indicated by the orange dotted line and the green line. They specifically relate to either the lecturer or the clinical facilitator or supervisor's role, which is the orange dotted line, and the green solid line is what we call the team's responsibility, which is the nurse learners. We've moved away from the word group because the students didn't like group work, and I think you will be aware of that. And so one of Nursing Council's New Zealand competencies to become a registered nurse is to work as part of an effective team, to be a team player. So instead of group work, I changed the term to teams. And I think it has a much better overall thought-provoking and engagement of students rather than group work. And it meets one of Nursing Council's competencies. So as you'll see from those 2 lines, the orange line starts first with the pre-engagement, as I've mentioned previously, in building a relationship with stakeholders in the community long before we start with the students, where it says orientation. And so that's developing a relationship, that's explaining to the stakeholders what we're wanting to achieve, if possible, what their part to play in it, what our part to play in it. It's also a time when we engage with our ethical committee, when we engage with our cultural committee of Indigenous population, so that we are ensuring that we have a really solid platform in which to build the students in when they from their orientation. And so their orientation is orientating the team of 9 to 12 students or nurse learners to the community development research project, to the rural geographical area, whether it's going to be locally, nationally, or internationally, and for them to get to know each other as well. And as you will see, the orange line still is above the green line until we get to just about phase 2 of the Chase model, when the students during phase 1 and phase 2 have undertaken a community assessment. They've profiled the community, and they do that with a number of frameworks, which I will share with you in a minute as well. So they build the data up. They talk with the community, to the stakeholders. They ask questions either by email or originally it was face-to-face, or by email or by phone, and they build up this really strong data about the community. And then as they get to phase 2, before they do their first presentation, which is back to the community and to our KTO, which is our Cultural Ethical Committee, where they pull together a presentation, it's then they can see that they are building good relationships amongst themselves. They've indicated what attributes they bring to this project, and a leader of the team has been identified, and they're feeling comfortable with each other, and they're feeling comfortable with the project that they're doing. And that's where you see the green line takes responsibility over the orange line, and that's where the students are in control of this project, with the lecturer or the clinical facilitator still journeying alongside with them, but with a lesser responsibility, but there to help them if they need to. And then you'll see that they move into phase 3, which is after the presentation and the consultation with community, that the identified health need or needs has been accepted. And then the students then move on and they undertake a significant literature review in relation to that health need, to the population they've identified that with, the context in which the geographical location sits, and they layer that in relation to the literature around rural as well. So they're building up a very strong evidence-based, literature reviewed argument that they're writing up that goes alongside their community profile and assessment. And then, as you see, as they go in between phase 4 and phase 5, they've built up significant information. They then look and they work with the Ottawa Charter, and they come up with a health promotion message. And then they do see what resource they can develop that helps to spread the health promotion message. And again, that has to be in relation to the context, the population, age group, and whether it is the resource is relevant to that population, ethnicity, and the context. And then as we move into phase 6, they develop up another presentation that is given back to the community. They compile their written report, the health promotion message, and the actual physical resource, which is all handed back to the community. As you will see in phase 6 itself, that's where the clinical lecturer or the facilitator really takes more responsibility, because the students have now completed their 4-week project, and 3 to 6 months later, either the clinical lecturer or the research assistant undertakes an evaluation of the impact that the health promotion message and or resource has had on that community population group, and we gather that information. This model has been adapted in 2020 when we started to move into COVID, and we've been interested in gathering data about how the community is exposed with COVID and how it's been resourceful of itself and how the nurses have responded to that. And then phase 9 is a new initiative that commenced for this year first, that all students, that's around about 120, 110, 120 of them, on successful completion of this project, will receive what we call as a micro-credential. So it's from the Otago Polytechnic, and they are able to be referred to and can call themselves a community development practitioner. And they are endorsed in one of the sustainable development goals, of which we also include in the project, as to when the health promotion message is developed, what potential of all of the 17 sustainable goals could potentially be improved if the health promotion message and resource is successful in the impact. And so that one, the sustainable goal, is included in there with their micro-credential. We've used the IACD, which is the International Community Development Association. Their term is all paid or non-paid practitioners or people who help develop communities are termed community development practitioner. So our students, on completion of their Bachelor of Nursing degree, can demonstrate to future employers that they are a community development practitioner. They have the skills and the capabilities to do this. They're utilizing frameworks, they're utilizing a research project, working in a team, and they have a micro-credential, which is also called an EduBit. I wonder if there's any questions so far, Chrissy.
We do actually. From Karen, she asked, with this being a research project, does this require IRB approval? If yes, is this through the university or the community partner?
IRB, is that ethical approval? I would think it would be.
I'll see if she messages and says,
Yes. I would think IRB, I don't know what that stands for, but I would think that is ethical approval.
Yes. And she said, yes, you answered the question. So
yes, that's all right. Yes, we do have ethical approval, but I just make it clear again, it's not interviewing, and it's not using a tape recorder, lay people. It's generally talking to the stakeholders and to professionals in the community. Okay, so this is the original Chase model, and you'll see the difference from the original 2017 to how we've expanded it now. And I'm sorry that the last one I didn't mention, but on the top we've got a solid black line on the 2021, and we're looking now about generally about sustainability, and we're going to map out the sustainability and the impact of evaluation and the impact of the community as our next stage as we move forward with gathering this data. Okay, so I did say that the nurse learners use some frameworks to gather the data. So the Chase model is the full picture. It's the framework in the community development research projects. And then we use the original work by Anderson and McFarlane, which was called the Community as Partner Wheel, which is the one which is indicated here on the left-hand side of my screen, which is titled Original. And now in 2020, 2021, we've adapted that. Now I'll just explain a little bit about this. So this is a population, as you can see in the middle. We'll go to the original. So there's a population. So data is gathered from census gathered statistics data about the population. As a general rule. Then the community as a whole, the geographical location, is looked at as a whole, as to what is the physical environment, what's the education, what's the transport and safety, what is the health and social services, politics and government, communication, economics and recreation. And so the students divide these subsystems, these 8 subsystems up, plus the population, and they gather secondary data to fill that information up. Around that, we also look at the geographical location, we look at the seasons, we look at the weather, we look at the real physical location. We also look at the history, the Maori history, if it's in New Zealand, or the Indigenous history, if it's from another country, and we look at the colonial history as well. So the students, within 3 or 4 days of commencing this project, have built up a very significant amount of information. They then talk together and they start to see where there's gaps. And those gaps are the questions that they go back to the community and ask specific questions about. So by the end of 5 days, we've got a community profile complete. We've got an assessment of the community. We've talked with the community. And then they start and they do a SWOT analysis. So they look at the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats, and that helps them build what is the health need, and which part of the population does that health need relate to. Then they undertake they put a presentation together, and that goes back to the community and to our ethical committee. In 2020, we included housing. So if you look at the one that it says adapted, we included housing as a subsystem, mainly because there is significant issue in New Zealand in relation to housing, and a lot of people living in cars, sleeping in garages, 2 or 3 families living in a home, and a lot of transient people, especially in rural areas, as well as people sleeping rough. So we felt housing was a significant one. So we've adapted that as well, included that, and climate change. So that was put in 2020. We believe that that is significant for nurses' practice to understand about climate change and the significance that has on health. And then for 2021, we included COVID-19. So we've adapted this Anderson and McFarlane Communities Partner Wheel to include another 3 subsystems, which includes housing, climate change, and COVID-19. So I'd like to introduce you to the start of the case study, which is this is the student nurse learners. Here they are working virtually with the Bishop's Castle community in the UK. So we have you'll see on the side of this a big screen, which is, we call this the big TV, which is a massive TV. It's computerized. It's a touch TV. It's a touch computer, and it actually pulls the whole of the relationship between the students and the actual community in Bishop's Castle. So here they are asking questions, getting feedback, networking, and of course they're learning. And this is an introduction to Bishop's Castle. As I mentioned, it is a 17th century medieval rural village sitting on the border between England and Wales, which is a significant, interesting factor because when we first worked with them, it was pre-COVID, and then in 2021, we worked with them through COVID. They've been locked down for 14 months. In New Zealand, we haven't been in lockdown for 14 months, although we've gone through another lockdown, but not 14 months. So our nurse learners, the ones you've just seen, really had to understand what it was like to be in lockdown for different population groups for 14 months. And so the learning that these students have is not just learning about how to undertake a community project, working alongside with communities, building up relationships, partnership, and so forth. It is also, when they work with another country, it's actually understanding the health system of that country. And specifically for this was about COVID-19, because that was significant for their learning. It's also about nursing practice in different countries. So when I say that this is global collaboration, this is literally a global way of understanding nursing, but from a grassroots level, doing it yourself and really understanding. So this is the beautiful little village of Bishop's Castle. As you will see in a moment, you would just look at the roads, look at the houses, look at the beautiful vista. But this specific community was built in the 17th century. Its roads and its access throughout the small village does not have appropriate access for cars, trucks, lorries, getting around. And I will indicate that a little bit further for you in a minute. So getting around is an issue. This is also a community that doesn't have any transport, public transport at all. So it has no buses, it has no taxis, it has no train. And so it is very much dependent on you having your own vehicle or mode of transport, or you are reliant on somebody else. Those are the things that come up with the community profiling. They're a very proud community in Bishop's Castle. It has only a population of 1,900, smallest town in England. But you'll see this road here with all these people. It's very highly tourist, or it was very highly tourist. It's a beautiful village that people love to come and visit. And it has also got a very strong musical and art history to it as well as the locals really providing what they call is the Middlemarch festival, where people from everywhere come and they enjoy themselves. It's got a beautiful history in relation to elephants, and if you're interested, you can Google that, and you can see the beautiful YouTube clip about Bishop's Castle. Anyway, so the community has a strong desire to protect itself as a heritage, and what is happening is, with locals and visitors, can become something that they want, but is also something that is having an impact on the community as well. And as you will see here, there's a very strong community spirit with the community. And I think that's another aspect of why we will be working with this community for a 3-year period. Okay, so as I have mentioned about the relationship between the community and the students or the nurse learners, that they met by video conferencing. It was virtual. The project was over a 4-week period. And initially the students, I did identify 3 main community health needs. One was about transport, the other was mental health of youth, and the third one was about just general health, because they also noted that there was a high incidence of drinking alcohol, there was a high incidence of smoking, there was a high incidence of obesity in the community. And we'll just talk through that a little bit more. So this is another clip of the students working in the picture below. This is the big TV. This is the students discussing and corresponding with the Bishop's Castle community. That's the person in the middle there, is Keith. And then the top picture, you'll see that that's the picture there of the core team stakeholders from Bishop's Castle talking with the students on the screen. And then this on the other side is a flyer that was developed to invite people of the community to come to a presentation, a public presentation for the last part of the project, to hear the presentation, and I think about 30 people came to that. And I'm going to actually, in a minute, the next slide, Chrissy, if you're ready, the next slide will be the students actually talking to you about the project, what they found, and then I will then indicate with one part of their findings how that was extended and expanded into 2021 with a grant that the community received. And the students this year developed, they moved on one of the identified health needs of mental health of youth. And next year, we're going to be further working with this population. I'll explain a little bit about that now. So Chrissy, I'm ready for you to put the next slide on, please.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko ma'atha te maunga, ko wairo gorge te awa, ko restio toku whānau, ko popi toku ingoa. Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. Hello and welcome. My name is Poppy, a representative of the Community Research Group here in New Zealand. Thank you for braving the cold and joining us here tonight. I just presented you with my pepeha, an introduction of myself, a welcome to you, and an explanation of my ancestral roots, all in Māori, the Indigenous language of New Zealand. The last sentence translates to greetings and welcome to you all as we gather as one in mind and spirit to present our work and share our thoughts. I hope this can underlay what we are doing today, gathering to discuss and share research, findings and resources about your wonderful community of Bishop's Castle. So, thank you again for being here. Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. Before I begin, I would just like to thank the core team. The core team is made up of various representatives from your community who have helped us in a great amount. They have helped us with our research, they've given us their time. So thank you very much, all who are up on the board, for everything that you've done for us. This is us as a group. We are a 12 Year 3 Bachelor of Nursing student studying at Otago Polytechnic here in New Zealand. The community of Bishop's Castle. I'm not going to lecture you on your own community. You live there and you know about it more than any of us do. However, I would like to highlight some points of interest from our initial research. The fact that you guys are a tight-knit community has come through from the very start, and the values of that tight-knit community have come through too. It was very interesting to look into your proud history and English heritage. The differences culturally and structurally between England and New Zealand have also posed interesting. For example, the government structure, the structure of your health system, how things are funded, they're all very different to what we have here in New Zealand. And it's something that we've taken a wee bit of time to get our head around, but it was important to understand these differences and get our thinking into your community mindset. Understanding Brexit, how that affects you as a community. Climate change and how you combat that as a community. The layout of your community, where you're situated, how having borders affects your health. One thing for me personally, converting miles to kilometres, that is still something I'm struggling with to do in terms of like figuring out how that affects your health. What being a rural community is to you and how that affects your health. What resources are available to you and what resources aren't available. All these things were covered by our research using the community wheel, which Jean would have gone over before. This is our first stepping stone to understanding what it's like to be in Bishop's Castle. We gathered primary and secondary data in our research. The primary data came from the core team, who we were emailing and Skyping throughout the last few weeks. The secondary data we collected online. From this data, we came together and collated a mind map, which you can see on the screen. The mind map consisted of potential gaps or health needs in your community and potential vulnerable populations that you have in your community too. From the mind map, we then narrowed down further to what 3 health needs we wanted to focus on for our literature review and potential health promotion message and health resource to develop at the end. These are the 3 broad topics that we came to in the end: transport, mental health, and physical health. We then split into 3 smaller groups to begin further research into these topics. I'm now going to hand over to 3 of my colleagues, one from each of the smaller groups, to go more in depth into the direction we took once we split into our groups. They're going to give you an overview of the rationale into why we chose this as a health need for your community, an overview of the literature that we found on the health need, the health promotion message that we developed using the Ottawa Charter, and the health resource that was made for each health need. So now I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who is going to start with transport.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I was working with my group on the transport side of this project. Transport is a fundamental aspect of a community, providing access to many integral services while also offering a great deal of freedom to move around a given area. In a rural area, due to scarcity of some social services, transportation is of particular importance. We identified public transport as an issue, as public transport does not cover the needs of the community. Buses only travel to nearby towns of Ludlow and Newton once per day, and council budget cuts continue to threaten transport to Shrewsbury. Another issue was disabled parking. The parking spots are inaccessible due to frequent misuse by non-permit holders. This is attributed to inconsistent markings, lack of signage, and the absence of any parking infringement enforced. Due to a high elderly population in Bishop's Castle, a higher than average portion of the public could be afflicted with mobility issues, making those affected a large portion of the population. These issues have a major effect on health, as lack of public transport puts particular importance on vehicle access. Therefore, accessibility is only possible with sufficient parking. For the disabled, a lack of designated and available parking has a significant health impact. Without this resource, those with disabilities may not be able to utilise available social services, resulting in detachment and isolation from network of facilities. From our research, we have highlighted a trend between rural communities and transport poverty. Transport poverty is commonly associated with rural communities. There is not enough funding, resources, or populations to drive the need for improved transport. Our research also highlighted two common minority groups, the elderly and the disabled. These minority groups are evident in Bishop's Castle in terms of transport and accessibility. The literature we reviewed further highlighted and reinforced the information and concerns that the core team of Bishop's Castle had already addressed. The Ottawa Charter is a health promotion framework which outlines the fundamental aspects needed for community health. We have used this model to identify health promotion opportunities within Bishop's Castle, the most important being raised awareness of correct use of disabled parking. From here, we moved on to our health promotion resource, a written submission to the Shropshire Council with 3 recommendations: better signage and road marking of disabled parks, repercussions introduced for incorrect use, and increased education regarding why incorrect use is important. Attached to our submission was a flyer that we have developed to be placed on non-permitted cars using disabled parks. The aim of this is to provide targeted education about the importance of correct use with the aim to prevent incorrect use reoccurring. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lucy and I am speaking on behalf of the Physical Health Group. Physical health is the third health need that we have identified for Bishop's Castle. We identified these as being key factors that impact physical health. Having a well-balanced diet and getting regular exercise is important. Food poverty leads to numerous health complaints. Maintaining good physical health is important to sustain well-being. There is a high prevalence of obesity in Bishop's Castle. Drug and alcohol misuse significantly impacts physical health. And smoking was an issue that was expressed by the core team in Bishop's Castle. From this, we aim to identify incentives to better manage these issues. We researched the effect that diet, exercise, and drug misuse have on physical health. For diet, we looked at the effect of Brexit and how this will impact on food prices, and the lack of education around maintaining a good healthy diet. For exercise, we looked at physical activity of both youth and older adults in the UK. And for drug misuse, we looked at the short and long-term effects that drug misuse have on physical health and the effectiveness of smoking, services, and drug prevention education. From our findings in the literature review, it reinforced the concerns that were raised by the core team in Bishop's Castle. We used the Ottawa Charter Health Promotion Framework to identify an opportunity for health promotion. We found that education was needed around gardening and the benefits that community gardening have on maintaining good physical health. From here, we created resources, which is a beginner's guide to gardening. It explains the benefits of gardening and provides households with tips on growing their own produce. These resources are available as a poster, coaster, and a magnet so that the message is available to all members of the community.
I'm Natasha Gray and I have worked on the Sustainable UN Goals and I have related it to the community of Bishop's Castle. So the United Nations developed 17 goals to attain a more sustainable future. These goals acknowledge the current global challenges, including poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, poor education, peace, and justice. For these 17 sustainable development goals to be implemented by the target year 2030, they are all interconnected, so no one is left behind.
At the completion of the projects, the students are encouraged to utilize the impact assessment research template to go back to the community, either physically or virtually, to ask the stakeholders what impact did the health promotion message, health promotion resources have on the health of the community. Thank you. Have I got access again now, Chrissy?
Yes.
Oh, I don't seem to. Oh, thank you. So that was a bit of a clip for you. The third issue was about mental health, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. So the students also identified mental health, and particularly mental health of youth, was also a particular issue, and so they developed a poster about where the services could be found in the UK, as there was no information available to youth in particular. They also developed a stress ball, which is, you can see it looks like a brain there, so that that youth could use that as a means to reduce stress. These resources were sent to the community, i.e. to the medical centre and to the local school for use.
Jean, can you share your screen again?
Oh, sorry. Certainly. I thought I was sharing. How do I go back and do that? Oh dear. I can't see where I can share. Could you share it? I'm sorry about this. I can't see where I can share. That seems to have disappeared. So the next slide that Chrissy's going to put up now is the resources that the students developed in relation to mental health and youth. Can people see that yet?
Can you see it, Jean?
No. The only thing I can do is end the show, go back to that. There's no way I can find out where to share it, Chrissy, I'm sorry.
Can you?
I'll keep talking. What has happened in 2020 in relation to the youth and mental health, that the resources that the learners developed were effective, so much so that as the community were in lockdown, Keith, as the community activist and the chairperson of the community health needs or development, went for a national grant, and the community received it. So this was on back of the students' work on the mental health of youth. Keith utilised that information and was supported by a national grant to develop a resource for specifically youth to reduce mental health issues. And it had to be in relation to technology. And so the grant has been given, and the students this year have worked on that again. So that's a new group of students, and it was to develop a Moodle or a Blackboard platform, but it was from the Moodle platform for youth to have resources online for them. The students continued to work on that this year, and they developed the Moodle site, the content of it. They developed a little sticker that says "Your mind matters." It's in the colors, it's yellow and blue, which are the colors for mental health. And the idea is they put it on the inside of their laptop so that they always can be reminded of what is available for them. In addition to that, another small group of this year's also looked at mental health, but looked at dementia of the older adults, and they came up with the notion of fulfilling Bishop's Castle eventually to be a village friendly or a dementia friendly town. And so they looked at what is required for that. They developed some information for the community, in particular for businesses, and they developed a poster and a sticker of the colours for Alzheimer's, which is yellow, is purple and red. And they developed, because I don't think you can see this, that they developed something that was related to England, which was the red rose, with the background of purple being dementia friendly. And we're going to see if those will be work in the future. As I mentioned in that slide, 3 to 6 months later, we go back and we undertake an impact of the resources and the health promotion messages, and to see if things are developing and changing. And for the future, we've been successful and received a grant from the MHCH Foundation that also supports the GRNEN to undertake a collaboration with La Trobe Rural Health School in Australia, and work alongside our students and their students in relation to mental health, rural mental health. And we're going to be working with case study with Bishop's Castle next year. And what we're going to do is we're going to develop a virtual reality film of the community, and it's going to be specifically related to mental health and the population there. And this virtual reality film will be able to be played back to the students, who will be able to absolutely physically experience the community and undertake a further in-depth data analysis of the community and to move forward. So I'm happy to say that Kate is online, and that we received the grant together, and we're going to be working on that next year. And you won't be able to see, because I don't think we've lost our screen, but I do have a whole 10 resources here that you can click on, and you can look at the published work that we've done previously, had published, number of us. And I'm also happy to say that I'm also going for a Springer publication book with the Global Geographies of Health series, and we are having an international authors and content on chapters in this book, which was about global health, rural health. And that's all from me. So I'm open to questions, and Kirsty might want to share something about the future of GRNEN and the next webinar. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean, so much. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat box or the question box. And while we do that, I can show you, GRNEN has recently launched our new networking platform. So that is really exciting for all of us. We encourage you to join on and join the conversation, share different research, and ask questions. I will go ahead, and you should be able to see that on my screen. I'll put a link in the chat box if you are interested in joining on. It is completely free. So like I said, we encourage you to join the conversation with us. Right, I see we have a few things in here. Is this student involvement for one particular course, or does it include more than one across the curriculum?
Okay, so it is the what we call the public health or community health clinical practice course. But naturally, to be able to be an effective practitioner, you do need those skills that come from other courses, such as evidence-based research framework, being able to gather data and those kind of things. So it's only in the last year of the Bachelor of Nursing, because they have those skills that they bring with them.
Wonderful. We have, I believe it's Kate, she said, that was wonderful, Jean. Looking forward to being involved in this from Australia. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
While we wait for any more questions, Jean, are there any tips that you have for anyone that is looking into starting something like this?
starting or already doing something like this, if we could put up the resources, if we could put that on the page, Chrissy, that would be good, with all the links to our publications. That might be quite interesting for people to see what we've already originally done and had published. That would be the first thing. The second thing is that it is time consuming, but it takes a lot of organizing, it takes a lot of leadership, and so it's a different mindset to get both the learners and others to understand that community development is about big picture nursing practice, and I think we've got there now, but it does take time.
Wonderful. All right, if there are no other questions, Jean, I just want to thank you for coming on here today, and for everyone who attended. It was a wonderful presentation. Again, if you are interested in joining the networking platform, you can go ahead and go to that link. Otherwise, go to our website and see the upcoming events and news that is coming up for GRNEN. If you have any questions additional for Jean or for Keith, you can go ahead and email me at info@grnen, and I can get anything you're wondering to them, get you in contact with them. So we are, I think that's it. Jean, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you very much. And anybody, if you are interested in knowing more about this, or if you can't get hold of these publications, I'm happy to send you some. There is some of the students' actual final projects that we have condensed into a publication. And if you just want further information, good. And eventually 2023, hopefully the publication of the book by Springer will come out, and that will have a number of case studies in it.
Wonderful. All right, well, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you at the next GRNEN event. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.